Hello and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. The thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, send questions and comments to our Twitter page at Mason Roundtable, on the Facebook event page for episode 208, my favorite symbol is, or in the YouTube chat running alongside this YouTube video. As for introductions, my name is John Ruark. I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia, and we have a very full house tonight, starting with Robert Johnson.
Greetings all. I'm Robert Johnson. You can find me at my new blog, The Pedantic Mason. I'm just kidding. RJ, Waukegan Lodge 78. Waukegan, Illinois, current sitting secretary, past master, and stuff. Thanks, guys.
You know, it wouldn't surprise me. It really wouldn't.
Well, I was trying to be like overly formal, like be the definition of pedantic. Whatever.
Could not be any more pedantic. Next up, Mike the intern.
Hello, Mike Hambrecht here. Village Lodge number 274 and Triandria Lodge number 780, where I am the junior steward and lodge education officer. Good evening.
Good evening, good evening. And next up, Juan Sepulveda.
Good evening, everybody. Juan Sepulveda here from sunny Kissimmee, Florida, member of Orange Blossom Lodge number 80, and the host of the Winding Stairs Freemasonry podcast. Glad to be with you again in voice and spirit.
All right, so good to see you again, Juan. Next up, Jason Richards.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Jason Richards here, past master of Acacia Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia, member of the Colonial Lodge number 1821 in the District of Columbia.
And joining us tonight, all the way from Mississippi, we have Jared Stanley, past master of Longstreet Lodge number 268. And he's a member of, what's the Lodge of Research, Scottish Rite, York Rite, OAS. What did I miss?
And we usually let the guests introduce themselves, John, but I mean.
Hey, he can say it better than I can, so that suits me just fine. I won't try to get into everything else. There's no AMD in my area and all that kind of good stuff, so I don't have quite a long list as the rest of you, but I will add, for the sake of my pride, that I'm also the webmaster for the Grand Lodge of Mississippi.
Hey, got to get those titles somehow. Usually we make them up, so good stuff.
That's right.
And of course, we'll let you plug at the end, but if people have seen your face before, where have they seen you before?
Jose Mason on YouTube, and also now streaming as a iTunes and Android.
Wow, this guy gets around. So yet another friendly competitor in the Masonic blog podcast infotainment arena. Put him up. That's why we have you on. All right, let's switch over to Masonic news. First up for today, we have an article out of the new and improved Freemasons for Dummies website. In fact, before we get to the main article, I wanted to show you that Chris Hodap has officially branded his blog as Masonic News. So it's no longer his personal opinion. It is Masonic News. It's the Masonic News Network, MNN. So coming from the official Masonic News source, dated Sunday, March 25th, 2018, a French police officer who was killed by a terrorist recently.
Clandestine Freemason.
Was a Freemason. That's right. What do you mean clandestine, Jason? Isn't this a universal brotherhood?
It is. It's kind of like the UN is a universal brotherhood based off of recognition.
It is until it's not. Yes, it seems to be that brother Beltram, who was shot by a terrorist who was 44 years old, was a member under the Grande Loge de France. So that is GLDF. And as we've mentioned in other episodes about French Freemasonry. There's currently about 3 different branches going on. There's GLNF, GLDF, and Grand Orient of France. And so of those, most mainstream in the United States recognition is under GLNF. And so although most of the United States jurisdiction does not have recognition with his Grand Lodge, you can obviously have sympathy for the act itself, that the fact that this was a man who was joining a fraternity like ours, that's inspired by ours and has a lot of the same initiation rites, and so of course is trying to better himself in a certain way. And so our hearts and prayers go out to him and his family. Anything else you guys want to add? So that was tragic to hear. And then let's see. The last thing we have, I don't know if I have it up at the moment, is the Masonicon is coming back up here in Massachusetts, up in Attleboro on April 28th. You can find that on the Facebooks, the interwebs. That's right, April 28th, which is a Saturday. Ezekiel Bates Lodge will be holding their, I believe, 3rd annual Masonicon. And I know RJ and I will be there for various activities. As usual, they have an awesome lineup. These guys are the real deal. If we haven't said enough before, try and go if you can. You will not be disappointed. And they're doing everything right, because it's not some national body. It's not some Grand Lodge sponsored event. This is one lodge that's trying to do the right thing. Their heart's in the right place. And for all guests this year, sorry, it's not free. They're charging the astronomically high ticket price of, what's that, Mike? $5. That's right. So for the price of a foot long at a competing Subway sandwich shop, YouTube,
or for the cost of what your Grand Lodge has been trying to introduce as the new per capita increase, you can get into Masonicon 2018.
I don't know if we can afford that, but everyone can afford Masonicon.
And it's
Seriously,
it's way less than
go. I just can't go. I can't afford. I'm on a fixed income. I'm just kidding. I know there's really people out there with fixed income. I'm not making that joke. I'm making fun of the argument. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say it's way less than the cost of a membership directory from the Scottish Rite Northern Masonic jurisdiction, though.
Ooh. That's probably some news.
Yeah.
I just want to say,
Mike, bring it on.
Okay, yeah.
The door. Here we go.
The Scottish Rite Northern Masonic jurisdiction has been sending out these postcards asking for members to update their data. And it turns out this is also an ad for them to sell the membership directory to everyone. And, not only do you get the membership directory as a hardback, but you'll also be offered the digital version of it. And then there's a sweater and a t-shirt that is custom designed for this, as it is. And then for the ladies, they also offer an embroidered bag for them to have. And this is all for the low price of 2 payments of $164.99.
I almost did a spit take there.
Yeah.
So what I found absolutely, I get it. You want to have up-to-date records, but what I think is funny is every time, you're a member of whatever organization and they're like, we won't sell your information to anybody outside, and then you're like, but you're going to sell it to everybody inside? And we have to do your work for you?
Right. Now, for the low price of 2 payments at $24.99, though, you can get a digital regional membership directory as well. So like for me, that would include Eastern Ohio and some of Western Pennsylvania.
Dude, I have buying like a $2.99 app. So digital. Come on.
It's called Amity. It's free.
Yeah. So I'm not complaining too much about this. I just thought it was an exorbitant amount of money for this. Granted, it's a nice hardcover that they've described all this stuff that the book is going to be. It's one of a kind. It's got all these photographs and articles from, Brother Masons and so forth. But, I'm just, 300 and what is that? $320, $330, something like that. I mean, that's just incredible. I mean, and I agree that it's also, there's some charity involved in this where it's going to some causes, but that's even negligible, because they don't describe exactly how much of it is going for that. So I don't know. I had to turn it down.
Do you think? All right.
The wife would not have approved.
All right, let's move on to this week's topic. And since we have a full panel here, let's get right into it. And I think it's only appropriate that with our new guest, Jared, should start off with a topic that I think Juan introduced a little while back, where we should all talk about what our favorite symbol is. Notice we didn't necessarily say Masonic symbol. It doesn't have to be Masonic, but something to kind of spark some research topics or some other ideas or what's influenced each of us individually. Why don't we start with Brother Jared to talk about what as your favorite symbol?
Well, I'm going to talk about the 47th problem of Euclid. And I have to say that I can't really look you in the face and say that it's my favorite symbol, but it is something that I think is really fun for sparking a conversation. And it is something that I'm going to share a little history about why I wanted to bring it up on this show. But before I get into that, can I take credit for being the guy who managed to get the entire TMR panel here tonight? I just want to know if I can officially thank you. Thank you. All right. So
no, you didn't get Nick Johnson.
Oh, yeah. Is he still official?
He's emeritus.
Okay. All right. So go ahead. 47th problem of Euclid. So I hope this is working. I'm terrified of technology not working for me, but it looks like it is. So I think everybody's familiar with this symbol. I don't know how about where you guys are, but around here we typically do the slide presentation. So we've got PowerPoint set up to show the slides. And this is the slide we show a Master Mason when he's told about the 47th problem of Euclid. And as I'm sure you guys are familiar with, it's a very short explanation. There's not much said about it inside of the lecture itself. So there's my video. I thought that that it was interesting. I shared, if you guys use Amazon, you can do a list, right? And we use those things here at the house quite a lot for setting up wish lists. So if Jennifer knows of something she wants for her birthday, but it's 8 months away from now, that's what we use the Amazon list for. We tuck little things away like that. And as it happened, I had put a little pin that was a 47th problem of Euclid on my wish list. And so for my birthday last year, that's what my family got me. They got me this pin with the 47th problem of Euclid on it. And I thought, well, that's an interesting discussion. Let me share that over on Facebook, because I was interested what other people might think that symbol would mean. So I have obscured the names of the innocent here. But here's that post. I shared this and I said just that. It's a birthday present for my family. What does this symbol mean to you? And rather than people really telling me what it meant to them, they just told me what they knew it as. So you can see, a response saying it's the 47th problem of Euclid. Somebody else mentioning that in their craft as a pipe fitter, they use it for doing squares and doing piping. And then over in another area where I shared it, I got the same kind of answer. Oh, well, it's the 47th problem of Euclid, symbolizes precision. So that felt kind of good. Somebody was thinking a little extra, giving me a little bit more to add to the conversation. The word eureka and other little things like that that really just kind of pop up, where people are used to seeing it in their lodges. But that didn't really answer my question. That wasn't really what I was going for. So let me tell you what I think that it means and what it means to me. So I hope I don't lose you. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of it, and then I'll get into more of the symbolism of it. So I think, to me, the key thing here is to think about how important the square is to Freemasonry. We hear it and see it all over the place, whether your DDGL or DDGM is telling you that your floor work is supposed to be on the square at this point, and they're yelling at you to stop cutting the corners, or whether it's the jewel hanging from your neck, or whatever the case may be. We hear square over and over and over again. And it seemed pretty interesting to me that here we have this symbol that is really all about proving how to make a perfect square, and people weren't really making that association. So to give a little bit of a history here, for those who don't know, because it is glossed over so quickly in the ritual, the 47th problem is actually a proof of the Pythagorean theorem. They're not one in the same, so to speak. They were actually developed hundreds of years apart. Said simply, it allows you to find the length of any arm of a triangle, but specifically the hypotenuse or the long side, whenever you know the length of the other two. So knowing two of the variables but missing one is kind of an important thing to where I'm going. So I want you to kind of tuck that a little bit away. So Euclid's proof came about in the 3rd century BCE, but the thought from Pythagoras dates back about 300 years prior to that, so about 6th century BCE. And that right there ought to give some of us pause to realize that even here, back before Christ, we're talking about 300 years difference between someone posing a theorem and another person coming out with a proof. And if you've ever looked into the Pythagorean theorem and all the proofs, then you know that even still today, people are coming up with proofs to show different ways that show that this theorem really does work in all sorts of different ways. All right, so we're already back to 6th century BCE, but still, the use of the 3-4-5 ratio goes back even further, at least back to the rope stretchers or the surveyors of ancient Egypt, which is estimated to be about the 13th century BCE. So we're talking about 1,300 years before Christ. And one place where they show that, one reason that they know that that actually happened is in a tomb called Mina. And I'm trying to bring up the image, guys. I think this is really neat when we find these things, where it's not just a tradition or a theory, but we can actually see something that provides some kind of evidence. So here is a painting of that, and you can see these rope stretchers are pulling this rope, and you can tell from the wheat field in the back there that they are measuring out the different pastures, so to speak, of where they're growing this grain. So rope stretchers in Egypt. But if 1300 BCE is not far enough back for you, we can go all the way back to ancient Babylonia. And now we are talking about 18th century BCE. And now this isn't showing ropes, and it doesn't specifically talk, obviously, it doesn't talk about Pythagoras, but I certainly can't read cuneiform, but what we're looking at here is a list of what are called the Pythagorean triples. So that 3, 4, 5, and every other whole number that you can come up with a 3-pair arrangement that makes a perfect right triangle, that's what they wrote. So that's what's actually on this tablet that we're looking at. So back 1800 years before zero, we're already, we have evidence of people using that. And so you can't help but start to contemplate and think about how much further back could it have gone, because we don't have history forever, right? So just like we try to trace back the origins of Masonry, and we cite the Regis poem as being the oldest, if not, or at least one of the oldest documents to show some sort of proof of how far Freemasonry goes back, we could do the same thing here with the idea behind the Pythagorean theorem and making a perfect right triangle. So to me, this mentions, or it sort of shows the immense history of humans being obsessed with making a perfect right angle. And the amount of mathematics that spews from this theorem is mind-boggling. Just trying to come up with some topics to talk about tonight, it was really just blew me, went way over any math I ever did in school, and really opens up your mind to understand how this simple thing that was being used 1800 years before Christ, still something that we're expounding upon and finding new ways to use even today. So I've seen a lot of it, but I didn't understand very many of it. So I want to kind of run away from the math because it confuses me and I don't want to lose your viewers. But I do want to point one interesting item that does affect us as Freemasons and to Euclid's problem. So let me pull up another image here of it where it's a little more clear about what I am to try to explain. Here we are. People usually see it. So you have clearly defined for you a cube of 3, a cube of 4, and a cube of 5. But the part I want you to focus on is the blank space in between, the part that actually forms the right angle triangle. And as you look at that, and if you consider taking just that white space, duplicating it and mirroring it, you can get a rectangle or an oblong square that is 3 units by 4 units. And according to Mackey, that is, in his opinion, the proper formation or dimensions of a lodge. So in his words, this is quoting from Mackey's encyclopedia, he said, "The form of a lodge room should be that of a parallelogram or oblong square, at least 1/3 larger from east to west than it is from north to south." So if you look at being 3 by 3 and then adding 1/3 onto that, you get 3 by 4. So that's the math behind getting the 3 by 4. So that little white space there shows us in Mackey's interpretation anyway, the proper dimensions or ratio for a lodge room. There's a lot more in there that you can really dig out, and I really do find that stuff interesting, but I'm going to step away from it so that I don't go down that rabbit hole, and partly because we are speculative Masons, and we are familiar with phrases such as, let me get rid of this screen sharing thing, we're a lot more familiar, instead of the math, we're more familiar with the phrases such as part upon the square or to square yourself. So how can we think about this symbol in a speculative sort of way instead of an operative sort of way? I like to speculate about how this theorem relates to that. How do we square ourselves? Well, in the theorem, we have to have 3 pieces of information. Again, 2 things are usually missing, and we're trying to use the Pythagorean theorem to figure out the result for the 3rd length of this triangle. Well, in Freemasonry, there's a seemingly endless number of things that are associated with the number 3. If we're going to square ourselves by 3 things, it would seem that those 3 things would need to have values of some sort. So perhaps those values are brotherly love, relief, and truth. Perhaps it is an attentive ear, an instructive tongue, and a faithful breast. Or perhaps it's friendship, morality, and brotherly love. But I personally like to think of wisdom, strength, and beauty, those 3 principal pillars that are taught to an entered apprentice, but are repeatedly expounded upon in the Fellowcraft and again in the Master Mason's degree, at least here in Mississippi in our Preston Webb variety that we have. So to square yourself, I think wisdom is wisdom, but strength is about supporting one another, and beauty is about morality. So we cannot square ourselves without those things, without wisdom, support, and morality. But if we can manage to have 2 of those things, then I think we can find the 3rd. And in doing so, we're able to square ourselves. So we can use this operative symbol and mathematical theorem in that way, bring it around all the way to relative thought, and realize, okay, if something's wrong in my life, how do I square that? How do I square myself? Or how do I even help square a brother? And by practicing those three things, I think would be a valuable lesson for all three. So there you are, my symbol for tonight, the 47th problem of Euclid.
Awesome. Very nice. Wow, you set the bar high tonight because you came fully prepared with graphics and images and everything. So I think you did a great job covering, thousands of years of history of that one symbol into a short period of time. So in the interest of time, let's move over to let's go to Mike the intern. What is your favorite symbol and why?
Okay, tonight my favorite symbol is the keystone. We obviously get the keystone in the Royal Arch degrees, and we first are introduced to it in the Mark Master. And it has, it actually carries through all of the degrees except for the Past Master in some way, shape, or form. For me, I'm going to be brief on a lot of this because I don't have a lot, but but it does have some symbology to me. The keystone to me is, it's twofold to me. First off, without getting into too much detail, it has to do with having some rejection going on there, because it's used as an analogy for the rejected stone, for the corner, which actually is the cornerstone in the Bible, but it's an analogy for that. And then it has importance on being recovered. So in any case, the keystone also symbolizes completion. And with that, we go into the building of the temple, which, if you look at that symbolically as the human body is the temple that we're actually trying to build, that also makes it symbolic of death. And it goes, so it carries forth to all of that. But it's also the last piece that's put into the temple. So again, that's the completion. That's about as much as I have for it. It's just been something, because Royal Arch just has had quite a bit of meaning for me, and that's just what I drew on. So
that's great. Yeah. So behind the scenes, Mike's been diving in all of Masonry, but more especially the York Rite as of late. He talked about the new capitular study guide that he got a couple weeks ago in our recent book club episode. So I know that Royal Arch, specifically the keystone, is really starting to fire some neurons there. Look at Jared's got his own portable keystone, half keystone.
Oh, cool.
Look at that.
That is very cool.
Because you never know when you're going to find a fallen arch.
Right. That's very cool.
All right, let's hop on over to Juan Sepulveda for his favorite symbol and why.
Okay. Well, my favorite symbol, the more I thought about this, I do love the square and compass, and there's some very ubiquitous symbols that I like, but I have to go back to the Memento Mori. It is one that I depict quite frequently in my art. It's one that adorns a lot of the design directly and sometimes a little bit hidden. And it is because I have an affinity to it, because I think it's very important for us to do just that, to remember our mortality. And I want to go over a few points that I found interesting in my brief research about the Memento Mori. Of course, it's a symbol that I'm familiar with, but it is always important to go outside of my comfort zone and find what other people see it as, and what different disciplines and different cultures may think of it. One curious thing that I found is that the skull and crossbones, in particular, have appeared in disparate cultures throughout the world. Completely separate cultures. You have it in the Maya Indians. They had their own version of the skull and the crossbones. Of course, considering how little we know about the their religious practices, whatever was destroyed in the colonization. But we can always assume that they had a very deep connection with mortality and their thoughts of the afterlife. Now, one thing that we let me go back to my notes quick. Excuse me. It is described as the bone box. And one thing I like to remind people, especially those who may have a what do you call that? Like they feel repelled by the symbol. It is undeniable that it's a very poignant symbol. It's a symbol that will elicit a lot of different emotions on people, and some people find it macabre and they find it to be somewhat dark. And yet everyone has one right under their face. They carry it around throughout their whole life. It's like, it is scary to look at if you think about it, but the symbolism of it is very profound. And going back to what the bone box refers to, I'm not going to go too much into detail of it, because I don't know how much of that is meant to be not secret, or anyway. If you think about it, it contains, it is the repository of all your thoughts and all your experiences, like the richness. It contains our most valuable organ. It is arguable that everything that is us is contained within there. You can lose a limb, you can lose, your legs, your arms, and you can lose organs, and yet, everything is contained within your brain. From a biological standpoint, the Memento Mori is also a very prominent symbol within the Stoic philosophy. It's one topic that I'm very passionate about, considering that it carries so much wisdom to live a life in a way that reflects on the things that you have direct control over and you don't. One of those being your mortality. You will one day die, and the practice of having some sort of token or some sort of symbol at the ready to remind you of the finality of life allows you to live life in the moment and do your very best where you are with what you have. And I think that's something that we lose sight of, as just by being members of the 21st century. We're surrounded by distractions. We live a hurried life, and yet if we are able to use this symbol to remind ourselves of the limits to which we are subjected, then perhaps we can be present and pay more attention to the things that really matter, like friends, family, and pepperoni pizza, of course.
Love it. Yeah, I really couldn't agree with you more. I know a guy who likes to collect skulls, so
I've heard of him.
Yeah, it's pretty important. Next up, Jason Richards.
All right. So Brother Juan Sepulveda talked about the Memento Mori, which is one of my favorite symbols, but I'm excited to get to go right after him, because my favorite symbol is the sprig of acacia, which could be seen as the completion of the idea of the Memento Mori. Of course, we learn about the sprig of acacia. It factors very heavily in the mystery of the Masonic third degree, where it is seen as a symbol of the immortality of the soul, and the fact that there is a life after death. So whereas the Memento Mori reminds us to treasure and cherish the time that we have, because our time is limited, the sprig of acacia then comes behind that and reminds us that there's a greater purpose in life, and that death is not the end for us. And that's always been something that's been deeply personal and deeply comforting to me, which is why I gravitate to this symbol quite a bit. So if we look at the acacia itself, it's actually been venerated as a sacred plant since the times of the Egyptians. So if I switch over here to my next slide, the acacia in the time of ancient Egypt was actually referred to as the tree of life, and it factored greatly into ancient Egyptian mythos and rituals. Acacia nilotica, specifically the genus of acacia, is portrayed hugely in Egyptian mythology. And it is said in the Egyptian mythology and mythos that the first gods of Egypt were born underneath the acacia tree. There was Osiris, the god of the underworld, rebirth and spirit, who was also born from an acacia nilotica tree. And Osiris is actually believed to live inside the spirit of all acacia nilotica trees. Now, if we move on through history, we find that the acacia tree was actually very prominent in biblical times as well, also venerated as a sacred tree. We see that the Ark of the Covenant in the Bible was made from acacia wood. So in the book of Moses, it's actually said that the burning bush from Moses's time was an acacia nilotica tree. And it's fitting because the acacia can be found in over 3 different subspecies in the Jordan Valley and the Sinai Desert. So it is a tree that is very prolific in the Middle East and in Israel specifically, and in both in Judaism, the acacia has been recognized as sacred. And was revered as a building material saved for those holiest of artifacts like temples and, of course, the Ark of the Covenant. The acacia, which in Scripture was called shita, or the plural shitim, was esteemed as a sacred wood. And this idea of acacia being one of several sacred plants has perpetuated and finally eventually found its way into modern masonry. So if we look at how it fits into masonry, looking at Mackey's encyclopedia specifically, he calls out three things or ideas that the acacia is emblematical of. The first, of course, we've talked about, which is the immortality of the soul. It comes from an ancient custom that mourners carried sprigs of evergreen with them at funerals. And we were talking about how in biblical times acacia was revered as a sacred wood. Well, there are historical accounts of people in biblical times planting sprigs of acacia at the heads of graves of their dearly departed loved ones. So let that sink in for a little bit. Moving on from immortality of the soul, Mackey also says the acacia is also symbolic of innocence, and that's because in the original Greek, acacia, the word acacia, actually signifies both the plant and the moral quality of innocence and purity of life. So the word is used both to designate the plant and also the idea of innocence. And then Mackey also concludes by saying the primary and original interpretation of the symbology of the sprig of acacia is that of initiation and rebirth, transiting from something old and coming into the light or something new. of course, John is really going to enjoy this this next part that I talk about, because acacia has also been argued that it has been used throughout history as a source of dimethyltryptamine, or tryptamine, excuse me, or DMT, which is a hallucinogenic substance akin to ayahuasca that is designed to bring about a deeply spiritual, deeply religious experience. So if you look at Alchemically Stoned by Brother P.D. Newman, or the book Mushrooms, Myth, and Mithras, the authors there actually argue that the ritual of the third degree is emblematical of a ritualized acacia harvest, because the DMT is found primarily in the roots. So, specifically a subterranean root bark of acacia, which is known to contain high levels of DMT. Looking at the idea of reaching down into the earth and into the grave to try to bring something back is emblematical of the of a harvest of acacia. We also have references in Cagliostro's rituals to acacia being a prime substance, or a specific part of a specific concoction that was imbibed to better enable the initiate to understand the ritual and the lessons imparted by the one performing the ritual. So, acacia as a plant is just deeply spiritual, deeply symbolic. It has a rich history. It has a dual meaning as what we call an entheogen, which is a substance designed to bring about a deeply, deeply religious, spiritual experience. And that, in addition to just the symbolism of the acacia, which is really the pinnacle of why we do what we do each day, which is looking toward a glorious immortality, as we say, are all the reasons why the sprig of acacia really is my favorite symbol, bar none.
There you go. Good stuff. A lot to cover there. So good job in pulling it all together. Let's see. Next up, we have Robert Johnson. What say you, Robert?
Well, so I guess I'll just talk I don't have as much information as some of you guys. Mine is the pentagram, specifically as it relates through its use throughout history. There's a lot of negative connotation that comes along with the pentagram. However, that's mostly, in my opinion, goes back to Cornelius Agrippa. But basically, the pentagram, a lot of people get it confused with like the Seal of Solomon. You have two different ideas there. And in fact, if you're looking through your Mackey's encyclopedia or whatever, what you're going to see are two ideas represented in most of his entries on the pentagram. So you're going to see things, words like pentacle. You'll see the pentangle, or the pentangle of Solomon, or the pentaculum Solomonus. But those they shouldn't really be confused with the pentagram. So just because they start with that pent, sometimes they're lumped together. So for the people watching, let's go ahead and share this. And this is the Seal of Solomon, which represents it's the endless triangle, or two triangles intertwined, which has its own meaning, really. But we're talking about the pentagram, which is 5 points, 5 angles, and of course the shape in the center. So what we really are looking at is The origin of that, the symbol's origin really goes back to my notes there. The Mesopotamia, and what we're dealing with is their plotting of the path of Venus throughout the night sky. That is likely one of the oldest pieces on the pentagram. Later on, Pythagoras is very well known for using the symbol as it relates to health, or what they had was called hygeia, or which is like hygiene, I guess you could call it. And Masonically, we see that in even the SRICF, right? So they use the symbol of the rose, and they symbolize it, or they utilize it with the idea of health. The rose has 5 petals. But back to Pythagoras, they also they used a term called it's hieros gamos, or something along those lines, which is kind of like the joining of heaven and earth, or if you follow your Kabbalah, your Keter and Malkuth, the symbol itself is like all over the place. So 5 is everywhere in almost all the kinds of symbology. We could wax about that for hours, but just some fun facts. You'll see it in Arthurian legends. So if you read Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, it's in there. It's the pentagram also is relation to the golden proportion, which is 1.618. Sacred number 5. So that's kind of where we work a lot with the sacred number. So we've got Pythagoras mainly thought about it as the joining of 2 numbers, 2 and 3. He called it the first coupled number, or the first even number, joining with the first odd number, but he excluded 1, or the unity. He didn't include that. So the triad represents like kind of this light placed, and one of the interesting things is in even like medieval or Kabbalism, or in medieval Europe even, they would put a pentagram at the top of letters because they believed that it granted the reader or the recipient of your letter good health. They used the pentagram, they would put letters around it also, and those letters would likely have been Greek letters that I don't know the names of, but it translates into like Salus, which is generally the same thing as health. And when I talked about Kabbalism or Kabbalism earlier, specifically the kind, you'll see different spellings of that word. This one is with a C. So if you're diving through any of your books, I think a good reference for this particular symbol is, you'll get a little bit better of a backstory in the lexicon has some really brief notes, which are really good, but also the illustrated Maggie's illustrated guide. Ancient times, the pentagram had, we talk about archetypes in Freemasonry. So everything has kind of like its little string that leads to something else that it's its equal, right? So we've got like 5 minor planets with 5 elements. In Freemasonry, it has like a slight allusion to the Pentagon, which is that shape in the middle, which we see featured in the camp in the 32nd degree of the Scottish Rite. Still in the southern jurisdiction, no longer in the northern jurisdiction. We also see it just in our 2nd degree. We have the orders of architecture, the 5 human senses, and we have the 5 points of fellowship, which again are outlined in Mackey's endlessly. Jason mentioned Cagliostro's Egyptian order, and within that also the pentagram played a part in which it was a seal that he gave to people. And when you got that seal, it was like kind of this mantra or a symbol that allowed you to have what we would call, I suppose, spiritual intercourse, like a oneness with God or something. It's also exemplified in Masonry in the latter part of our secondary degrees, I guess you would call them, right? So the Royal Arch. So in the York Rite and the Royal Arch, we have something where this symbol somewhat symbolizes the 3 great masters in a sense. And What I did find what was kind of interesting was they talk about Elias Ashmole being the first speculative Mason
in England.
In England, however, one of the neat records they did find was Murray seemed to be the first speculative Mason to make a mark, and that mark is the pentagram or the pentangle. In most of my research, the stuff that fills up my days and nights of actual, like, I'm doing research for something, is on the word. So in terms of the word, the pentagram actually symbolizes the word made flesh. It's a literal symbol of deity. What we do find is, I talked about Cornelius Agrippa. He wrote a book. It's the Philos Occult, and he basically said that that the pentagram represents this like sacred idea, or it commands or holds command over the evil spirits. But again, what's interesting here is he calls it a pentagram, but really it's like the seal of Solomon. They're two different things. So you'll see the mixing up in texts all over the place, and I think that's where it gets a lot of its negative connotation from. Christianity uses the pentagram even. So in the early days, and I'm not sure if it's still used much today, but they use the pentagram to describe the 5 wounds of Christ. So his 2 feet, his arms, and then the crown of thorns on his head. So they use that to symbolize those wounds. And we've talked about kind of this idea before, whether the pentagram is 2 points up or 1 point up. And that really has to do with, it's kind of indicative of whether the intent behind the symbol is altruistic or if it's humanistic. So materialistic or spiritual. Some people will say it's evil or good or whatever. And I think that's a misinterpretation, really. One of the last things I guess I'd leave you with is that the symbol itself, there you go, perfect, points up. We say points in or out, so I guess if you're evil, your points up. One of the things that I want to show you is a symbol that I give and I show in my presentation on the word, and I really owe this to the late Dr. Bruce Fisher. Dr. Bruce Fisher was instrumental in allowing me to understand some of his life's work on symbolism and kind of the occult anatomy of man. And so one of the things that we find with the pentagram itself is kind of like that it's the genesis of John's favorite symbol. I'll let him talk about that, but what we find in this symbol particularly is that we have, when you lay the pentagram over the body, it's really kind of this symbol that alludes to the divinity of man, if you will. Usually we have, what we have anyway, is 5 angles of 72 degrees, and 5 times 72 is 360, which is the circle. And the circle is a symbol for deity. It is the oldest symbol for deity, outside of, I believe, what John will talk about next. So that is mine. It's the pentagram. I thoroughly enjoy the symbol, and it's on my ring. It's a great symbol for mathematics too, as far as music goes. The rule of fifths. So check it out. You should watch Math and Magic Land with Donald Duck on YouTube. That'll give you some insights on that too. So anyway, that's all I got.
Yeah, Donnie Dillon said it's been at least 2 weeks since one of his Masonic podcasts has not mentioned Math Magic Land. So it's about time we brought it.
There it is, buddy.
All right, so we're back top of the queue again. Here we go. So as RJ alluded to, my absolute all-time favorite Masonic symbol is the point within a circle. So much
a boob.
Homer Simpson likes it. Yeah, you could say it looks like that, but it's quite a bit more. Let's see. So
it actually doesn't symbolize anything female.
Nothing at all, actually. Well, or does it? Because I have an entire tiled presentation that I love to give in tiled lodges about this, because there are parts of our 3 degrees that build up to kind of the strength and power of this symbol. But I think it's fascinating that we get introduced to a symbol like this in our 1st degree of Masonry, and then we really don't explain it in any detail, nor do we build on it in any of the preceding degrees. So, or the post degrees. So, I just find it odd that it was kind of placed there and then never really expounded upon, which is to get what Pike loved to do, was to really say, well, why is that there and can we break it apart? I mean, as you can see, I like what Carl Hearn has done with his alter ego clothing line with his symbol there. But to your point, RJ summarized it pretty well, that it is a symbol of the deity right now, unless someone's changed it. Go to Wikipedia, just go look up the Wikipedia article for God, G-O-D, and sure enough, you'll see the monad, or the point within a circle, right there on that page. And it's a strong symbol because what I find fascinating from a symbology perspective is that it has been found in various cultures through various time frames all around the world, right? And so how can we as humans come up with the same symbol to mean the same types of things across time and space? I think it's fascinating that there has to be something either divinely inspired or something inherent in our DNA and our just that divine spark within us that has this common language across all cultures, right? So you have things that, like the symbol for Ra in Egypt, because Ra being the sun god, it became a solar symbol. You'll see it show up in all the way in China. The current term for the daytime is Ri, R-I. And if you go back at the earlier versions of the symbol for Ri, it wasn't the 2 boxes as we know today. It's actually a point within a circle, because it's the symbol for daytime, right? So it's another solar symbol, but it's not just a circle, it's a circle with a point in the middle. And you fast forward and through the solar symbols in alchemy, right? You have the planetary symbol of the sun is the point within a circle. And then that corresponds to gold, which is a brilliant, shining, kind of capitular symbol in alchemy, both operative and spiritual alchemy. So when you put all these together, it's really fascinating. And again, I have a much longer presentation that shows points within different cultures and different Masonic degrees that shows that this is a really the whole point of the work that we are here to do is to really become one with and get to know our Creator much better. And that's really what our Masonic labors are really supposed to be for. And so that's it. The point within a circle is my favorite symbol, and I hope you'll do some more research on that. So that's it in a nutshell. If you want to hear more, look me up. I'll give you the tiled presentation that I hope and know you'll enjoy. Let's go over to the social media. What are the people saying on the social media there, Jason?
All right. So let's see. Of course, over on Facebook, we've got Mike Hambrecht, who posted the link to Math Magic Land, which is awesome. We've got our good friend and brother Joe Martinez, who says one of his favorite symbols is actually the broken column, which is really, really interesting. Donnie loves the circumpunct, as well as the blazing star. And that's about all we've got on Facebook. Moving over to the YouTube chat, which has been hopping tonight.
I know we had a lot of skull love. That's the important thing.
Yeah, except for Gary. And Gary, despite your trepidation about skulls, we still love you. Skulls are a Masonic symbol. There's a Midnight Freemasons article about that. His brother Brown's favorite symbol is the cable toe. And Jared, you're getting a whole lot of love on this YouTube chat, so you're going to need to check it out when we're done. Gary, one of Gary's favorite symbols is the hourglass. It's a really good one too.
Very cool. Hey, this was a good conversation full of lots of detail, and I know there's lots of ways we could go with it. So in the interest of time, we're going to do a 3-word retrospective of our shameless plug thoughts. So to wrap things up, you get 3 words, and then you get to plug whatever you want. And let's start with, why don't we do Robert to give us a 3-word retrospective, and then plug whatever you want after that. Making you think. I know it's late.
I don't know.
You want to start with me, John?
There's 3 words. Good stuff.
That's my 3 words. It's been amazing show. I loved having Jared on. Dude is like, when just recently somebody posted a comment on one of my YouTube videos and they were like, how do I know more about the inner workings of Freemasonry? Like really what they do, like the day-to-day, and some introspection on the symbols, and like, what's this mean and what's this? And I was literally like, you need to look up this show. So, Jared, fantastic work. Thanks for coming on this program. I love hearing about everybody's favorite stuff, whether that's books or the symbols of how we interpret stuff. It's so important to me to see the world and see things through other people's eyes and get their experience, because I mean, I'm huge on the idea of experiencing other people and experiencing things like what makes other people happy. I want to know why that makes them happy and feel that for them too. So it's just an incredible experience to be able to hear these guys and everybody else out there talk about. It's personal too, so it gives us some good bonding time to really understand each other and what we find in symbolism. So if you like podcasts, Sunday night 9:30s, Whence Came You, and Midnight Freemasons, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, new articles. Thanks.
Thank you, Robert. Mike Hambrecht, 3 words and a plug.
Keystone is absolutely amazing. That was 4, actually.
Superlative. I like it. Added that in. A little flourish.
Yeah. So nice little plug here. 2 weeks before MasoniCon will actually be kind of the World Series of Freemasonry, where RJ and I will first start off at my chapter, Willoughby chapter number 231, with him doing the Lost Word. And then the following night, we'll be doing the More Light night at Triandria Lodge, which is going to have Colonial Freemasonry by RJ. And then we travel all the way across the state of Ohio. I apologize to everyone. I forget the name of the lodge we're going to.
I think it's Hope Lodge.
It's which one?
Is it Hope Lodge?
I think that's right. Yeah. Yeah. And we'll go there and do Colonial Freemasonry again. So kind of a World Series of Freemasonry. So anybody who's interested in Ohio or anywhere else, please come to that. Please come to any one of those. I'm glad to have you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Juan Sepulveda. What's your 3-word retrospective?
Symbols change lives. And I want to remind everybody, everyone has a different symbol that they love. Hardly anybody has just one symbol that they feel passionate about. The one thing I want brothers to take from this episode is that what you thought was just one symbol could include 100 interpretations, 25,000 illusions. Like there are all these network experiences and lessons that are alluded to within one symbol. And the way that a symbol can change your life is if you make it a part of your life and you allow it to perform its intended duty. And it is to quickly help you recall a greater lesson within the society of a symbol. So I hope that you enjoyed all the discussion that we had tonight, and let us know what your symbol is. Do you have a favorite symbol? If you're driving, stop this second on the shoulder and go in and let us know on Facebook.
It's that important.
It is that important. You
Or
can always
wait until you get home or wherever you're going.
That's for lazy people. Do it now, procrastinator. Stop on the shoulder and let us know what your symbol is. We would love to hear it. And quickly, I wanted to say thank you to all the brothers that have subscribed to the Masonic Mystery Box. And I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to spoil anything about what may be coming in this upcoming box, because I want it to be a mystery for everyone. But finally, I wanted to reveal first and foremost the latest installment of the Unlocking Collection. This is called Unlocking Wages. If you're listening to the podcast, I encourage you to go to youtube.com/The Masonic Roundtable and check out what I just flashed in front of that camera. It can be yours if you go to thewindingstairs.com. Thank you, brothers.
And it's not NSFL. It's not safe for lodge.
Correct.
It is actually safe for work.
Yeah.
All right, Jason Richards, 3-word retro, go.
Everyone's perception differs.
There you go.
Different symbols mean different things to everybody. Different people prefer different symbols because Masonry should be a uniquely personal, deeply personal experience. Thus, you're going to gravitate toward things that are going to be different than your fellow brethren, and that's okay, because Masonry is as a journey should be as unique as the members who are going through it. Part of where we are in the fraternity today is because that's not the case.
Well said.
So thanks for watching. We'll be back next week.
Very cool. God willing. Next up, Jared.
Freemason.
Let's hear it.
Freemason. No. See, I can't even do it right. Freemason, square thyself. There you go.
I like
Yeah,
it.
I like that one.
Good save.
All right, so for a plug, if for some reason you have not been over to youtube.com/what is a Mason, then I hope that you come. On Thursday is a video related to the degree work, and on Saturday is a question and answer where I try to answer questions from Masons and non-Masons alike and try to get some more information out there about Freemasonry. And I'm sure, just like many of you have, I know you've talked about it on the show before, it's very gratifying to hear somebody say, thanks for answering my question. That's what gave me the confidence to go ask for a petition. So that's why we do it, and I hope you'll come over there and join me.
Awesome. It's been a pleasure to have you on, and hopefully we'll do this again sometime. All right. As for me, my 3-word retro is remember your death, right? It's a culmination of a lot of my Masonic philosophy. I know it goes a lot with Memento Mori and what Juan said about the point within the circle, and even a little bit of what Jason said in his, his acacia symbolism. So really good stuff. Great show. Exceeded my expectations like you guys do every time. So thank you very much for watching and contributing and playing along at home. And we'll see you next week. Thanks for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.